convene this special meeting. Can we do a roll call, please?
Shaw,
Here.
McIntyre. Here. DeCook.
Here, we have a quorum, thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda this morning is item number 1, discussion of proposed ordinance, Chapter 6, illegal dumping on public-owned property.
All right, thank you.
And who will be presenting on that? Or who wants to take the lead on the dumping ordinance?
Do you want to, or do you want me to?
You can start with,
Okay.
you can do dump.
So the dumping ordinance has been written, at the request of the supervisors. This ordinance is to, we have people who are dumping illegally in some parts of the county, and what we're trying to do is to put an ordinance in place that allows us to go after them when they do. And it's also so citizens know that you just can't dump your stuff. So that's what this ordinance is about. We brought it forward today, to this work session, so supervisors have a chance to look at it, give us some comments, and let us know what you think. What we'll plan to do is put this on the agenda to set the first hearing, probably for the second meeting in November.
And would you kindly maybe give some backdrop about, did we have a dumping ordinance prior to this?
We have not had a separate dumping ordinance before. I mean, there's nothing that has addressed dumping in public. So this is what this ordinance is for.
So we didn't have a penalty or a specific penalty?
We had civil penalties within one of our chapters, but this actually gives us more options.
For enforcement?
It would rely solely on state code before if they were caught,
Right.
correct?
And now we have our own ordinance, or we will have if the board approves it.
When it was getting drafted, sorry to keep asking questions, but when it was getting drafted, was there a maximum penalty that was allowable under the Iowa code?
The Iowa code allows, for state code violations, it's $750 as civil penalty.
And can we incur our own on it in addition to the state code or no?
Yes.
These are the questions I have. Are there any other questions or any other comments from our engineers department? I mean, I just want, I guess, part of the reasons why we're doing this is because I think it's pretty clear that we have an issue. That issue's not getting addressed, and it's frustrating. From your perspective, David, as our engineer, have you noticed an increase or about the same since you started?
It's just about the same. It's kind of a all the time issue for us, and I think this'll give us more teeth. I mean, it's, you know, if we catch them in the act, it's not just the civil penalty. I think there's a cleanup cost we can, an additional cost we can charge above and beyond the civil penalty, and this spells that out. So.
And just for the benefits of anyone who's watching this online or anyone in the room, let's just take a historical example. Someone dumps some mattresses, an appliance, a bunch of yard debris, random stuff from their garage that's just absolute trash, and they dump it all into some road, probably in the northern part of our county where it historically really happens, but it happens in the southern part too. Some citizen drives by, swerves, maybe pops some tires, whatever, calls it in. What happens? Who cleans it up?
We do it as a low priority item.
So it's county taxpayer resources.
Yeah.
You shuffle your timing and priorities, and you get to it when you can get to it. But we ultimately, as taxpayers, clean up the mess for the few that are dumping over and over and over again.
Correct.
And now we have a mechanism where if we catch someone in this act, we can fine them as well as put the specific cost to them that we incur for the cleanup.
That's the intent of the ordinance, yes.
When you pay that gas tax at the pump, you expect it to go to roads and bridges, and unfortunately, we've got to use some of our resources to clean up junk in the ditch.
Yeah. I get it. Okay. those are the only questions I had. Do my colleagues or anyone else have any questions?
Aaron, this is Doug. Can you hear me?
I can, sir.
Yeah. My only question is, and I did have a little conversation with Megan, but we had nothing in the county code or statutes about any dumping violations.
It's my understanding, not specific, that it just followed what the state code was.
I think we just relied upon like the state penalty if someone was caught. Yeah, go ahead.
And then, did Don draft this?
Yeah, I had a lot of help, but yes, we worked together on it. Doug,
I didn't hear the answer.
Yes, with some help.
with a lot of help from David in his office.
Did we, look at other counties and see what they're doing?
We did.
Yes.
All right, that's it for me.
Anything, Crystal?
No.
Lastly, I'll just add, I think that this, in my mind, conceptually, it's sort of a two-part option. Option one is we have to actually have an ordinance that's enforceable, and that has some teeth, that has some penalty, and then the second prong of that is, you know, we're really not moving the needle too much unless we catch a few people in the act. And that second aspect is going to be something that's gonna take some resources and some effort. And I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I think it should happen, but I just want people to know that without, you know, maybe some increased patrols and key aspects, key portions, or cameras and or a tip line, I think that there's some additional things that we need to do. But the first part is we have to have something that's enforceable. I think in time, we will procedurally, could one of you explain to the public what needs to occur next? This is a discussion item on the ordinance draft. It's my understanding that we need to have it read at a hearing, and then we need to have at least 2, if not 3.
You have an option for 3 hearings. What we'll do is at the next board meeting, it'll be on the consent agenda, asking the board to set a hearing, a public hearing, for this ordinance to be before the public. Ordinance will be available to be seen in the auditor's office online, and since this one is a short one, we likely will publish it in the newspapers. Then at the public meeting, the public is welcome to comment, in fact encouraged to comment. That process is we have the first meeting, and then we have a second reading of the ordinance, and at that point the supervisors can approve the ordinance, or they can set it for a 3rd hearing.
And so, you know, there's the procedure, but I will tell you in the public that when we have that public hearing, I would encourage people that have been plagued by this issue, by the people that have popped tires because they hit nails and screws, by the people that have seen their front yard or the road that they drive to work all the time loaded with garbage and refuse. Come, share your story, because I think that we'll need to get some buy-in from a lot of people if we really want to have people getting caught. And so my guess is that maybe the news might come and pick that up a little bit. That might also help loosen some purse strings, because it's going to cost some money to get people who break this ordinance caught through cams and some other things. But if that's something that you're passionate about, I would encourage you to come and share your stories when we have that public option time. So thank you for all the hard work, both departments and anyone who worked on the actual ordinance too. I know that was not easy, but you know, I think it was needed and I appreciate it. Seeing nothing further on action item 1, we will now move to action item 2. Discussion of proposed ordinance, Chapter 9, registration and operation of all-terrain ATVs, utility task vehicles, and off-road vehicles, UTVs.
So it's my understanding we received a online petition, So there's some interest in looking into an ATV and UTV ordinance for the county. Did quite a bit of research on it. We got together, again, another team effort. Got together with Dawn, Polly, and Randy Spur, and had a meeting just a few days ago to hash through it. Then based on those comments, this is more a final draft we'd like to present. Similar to chapter 6 that we just went over, this would go through the public hearing process, but we don't want to start that process without the board taking a look at it and getting any final comments, if any, from the Board of Supervisors. It's a very lengthy ordinance. I think that's a good thing because that gives more for the public to comment on. If they don't have anything in front of them, there's really nothing to speak on. So I can run through it if you want me to, or briefly. I mean, the first couple pages, just your standard definitions, but then we get into operations on roadways. A lot of different restrictions on these things. It's very important to point out that agricultural uses are still exempt. This is gonna be more of the recreational aspect of using these vehicles. And really just restriction after restriction, and then at the very end, there's a map that spells out certain roads that they're not allowed to use them on. We took a map of all our roads, and anything with over 150 vehicle count a day based on the 2016 counts would be a restricted roadway. So there's a list of those streets and a map on the back. And then we also, if Polly's, the recorder's office is able to do it, there's some registration requirements with the county above and beyond any Iowa DNR registrations. And with that, I mean, if there's any questions or comments on any of the sections, we can take those. And as Dawn said, I would recommend doing the 2 to 3 readings to get as much public input as possible. There could be a lot of liability associated with allowing recreational use, but if there's a way to do it safely and the public, you know, it's kind of the will of the people, if they really want this and we can do it safely, then it could be an option. Or the board could choose that, you know, we're too populated of a county, too much traffic volume, you don't want an ordinance whatsoever, but when we receive petitions from the public, we gotta give them something to look at and something to comment on.
This is another situation where we looked at ordinances from different counties across the state, some matching our population size, some with higher population, some with lower. But we did take a good look at the ordinances from across the state and use some of the things that were in their ordinances.
What's the general breakdown based on your research of how many counties allow it, how many counties don't allow it? Is it a split?
We sent an email out to all the counties. I received about 20 responses back, so you could assume maybe half the counties have an ordinance, half don't, based on that response. So somewhere between 20 and 50 counties might have it.
And I don't own a UTV or ATV at this point, and so I'm not really that familiar with it, but I'm just off the cuff guessing that some of the counties that do allow it probably have less population. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair statement, and a lot of them would say you can go on any gravel road, whereas this one restricts quite a bit of them based on our vehicle counts.
So even this one, some of those we've got some gravel roads.
Yeah, exactly. And you wouldn't be allowed on pavement. The way it's worded is you can only take a pavement if you're going from the next, you know, from one gravel road to the next permissible gravel road. You're not just driving around on pavements. It's to get from gravel to gravel.
So you're telling me it'd be awfully difficult to drive a 4-wheeler from Norwalk to the admin building?
Yes.
Even if this passes?
Yeah, and it basically states any hard surface road, you're not permitted to do recreational use on that.
I got it. Okay. Well, I sort of concur with the multiple public readings on this. I'm gonna tell everyone up front, I'm sort of on the fence here. I want to spend some time with it. I want to hear from a lot of people because while I certainly understand that there's some people that are very passionate and want this, I think there's also probably some valid reasons why some folks don't want this, or there's some liability issues, so I think that those all have to be pretty well hashed out before I'm comfortable with it, but I'm not saying I won't be. I'm just saying I think that, this wouldn't be one where I would advocate for 2 public readings, I'd want 3, and I'd certainly wanna hear from, legal, from our sheriff, from everyone with, their thoughts and comments on it, so. But at least it's moving in the right direction for the possibility of this, and I'm pleased with that. Any comments or questions from Doug or Crystal?
Aaron, I know we'll give the users plenty of opportunity for comments, so, we'll go with what is it, the 3 readings?
Yeah, we'll put it on the consent agenda for our next regular board meeting to set a public hearing, and then we'll make sure we have 3 before we make a final board decision on where this one shakes out. But I will say this, the people that I've heard from the most are historically south of 92 and maybe even a dab further south than that, sort of our bottom 2 townships geographically. And what I don't see on the map is a lot of red there, and so I get it. I don't anticipate nearly as much UTV or ATV traffic, between Norwalk and the Plaza and Carlisle, but so I don't know. We'll certainly look at it. Anything further on number 2? Seeing no further comments, we will now move to our 3rd item, which is our engineer's request for equipment, or discussion of equipment. What do we got?
So that 3rd item, we'd like to purchase a single axle dump truck and 1 semi truck to replace a couple ones that are kind of past their useful life. It wasn't explicitly stated during our budget discussions in January, so we wanted to bring it before the board to see if this was something we can do. It's just one of those things, it's tough to predict how fast a vehicle's gonna deteriorate and rust out. Some of them having to sit outside, so you can't really predict a lot of those things, but due to the deterioration of the vehicle that serves the Greenfield Plaza and Hills of Coventry neighborhood, it's a specialized piece of equipment for us. We need a smaller truck to maneuver those corners and get into narrow spots in the county. So it's definitely a need for us and something we'd like to look into purchasing.
That was a single axle dump truck?
Yeah, and then the semi truck would replace 2 of the other semis that still have some value to them, but our fear is that if we keep running these semis, they're eventually gonna become worth scrap as opposed to retaining some more value if we can auction those off as well.
And it's currently your expectation that our single axle dump truck is probably scrap value, 2,000-ish?
Yeah, at this point.
And you think that the one that you wanna purchase is 35, is that right?
The single axle dump truck, we found a nice used one with only 24,000 miles on it for 47,000. And then a used semi, those can get quite a bit of miles on them and keep running for years. We would expect not to exceed 30,000. We're looking into some now, they're around 26,000, but I just wrote it as not to exceed 30,000 for a used semi truck.
Was the plan when I read your email to sell the 2 semis that you had?
Yeah, and we think it'll be about a wash between selling them and then purchasing a new one, but as we all know, the revenues and expenses don't talk to each other, so we're not planning on amending the budget or anything like that. We had the placeholder of $300,000 for a potential motor grader, and we've been monitoring revenues and things of that nature with the COVID. But we would like to use that dollar amount to cover the cost. So instead of $300,000, we're looking at about $87,000 for 2 pieces of equipment. And then we would absolutely not purchase a motor grader this year. It would just be off the table as we kind of continue to monitor revenues as they come in.
Only thing I'm not tracking with is, single axle dump truck. You said you found one for 47, and then the semi truck, you said you found one for 27, 30.
We've found, we're still looking around at those, but, we found one about $26,000 with 750,000 miles on it.
So let's say it's 30 and 47, I've got 77, and then you were planning on selling some semis?
Yeah, and we're guessing around
20 or
10,000
25?
for one, 15,000 for another one.
Okay, so maybe up to 25. I guess that was my only question, is if I'm at 47,000 plus high-end 30.
Yeah, I think I misspoke,
we're
it should be
70
77,000.
77, and if you're getting 25 back for some equipment sales, I mean, could we not get it whipped for 50, 52?
That's gonna be your net, yes.
Yeah,
Cause you'll have unexpected revenues from the sale of those as well, cause we didn't budget capital asset sales, so yes, you're gonna net about 50 out of that 300.
Okay.
But it won't require any type of amendment.
Gotcha. Well,
the money's there, it just wasn't specifically listed at our budget meeting, so we wanna make you aware of these potential purchases.
understood. Any questions from the board?
Aaron, I would move that we purchase a single axle dump truck and a semi truck.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Only comment I'll have is that, you know, I just don't know about our semi, but, or two semis, but that makes sense, sort of. The single axle dump truck, I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we don't have that piece, we're gonna have a dickens of a time removing snow in the plaza and the hills, because we can't run a big, what you plow snow on highways with, so I'm supportive as well. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Tracy, please.
Show,
Aye.
McIntyre. Aye. DeCook.
Aye, motion carries. And then number 4, this is sort of the back end of that, although technically I think we might be a little high on it, but consider line item reappropriation engineer budget, $85,000. I suppose that extra flexibility doesn't hurt anything, it's just I think it'll actually net out closer to 50 or 52, but.
Well, the 85 is for
The purchase.
different capital assets.
Yeah, it'd be for motor vehicles.
Yeah, so, David's email, the first piece was this,
It's not the highest priority when we need to update our fleet of pickups at the
yeah,
moment.
that was when David came at budget time, that was the piece of equipment for 50,000 that he had intended on, purchasing, in his equipment line item. What he's asking for is that we take 85,000 out of his equipment line item and move it to the vehicle line item, because he would like to
For the pickup
purchase
trucks.
3 new trucks, pickup trucks?
Correct, cause we had to pull
Which
the
were
keys
not
and-
budgeted for, so it's really not like a reappropriation as far as function goes budgetarily. He's simply asking, instead of purchasing equipment that he had told the board he was going to, he'd like to purchase some pickup trucks to replace some that they had to pull. Is that fair, David? Sorry.
Yeah, and if we wanna revisit, getting the packing device that runs behind the motor grader, we can do that for next year's budget if that's something we still think we need. But for now, just needs have kinda shifted with, some of the pickups, like the trucks, become deteriorated and need replaced.
I for one appreciate flexibility. I mean, if our priorities are you pulled keys on some pickup trucks that we need replaced, as opposed to a piece of equipment which would be nice to have but not an absolute necessity, it makes sense to me. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion, Aaron. I'm not sure, is it or is it not a reappropriation?
Yes.
Yes, it's a line item reappropriation. How about I read line item reappropriation of 85,000 from account number 0020-20-7200-610-610-63100 to line item 0020-20-7200-610-63500.
Second.
I would move that.
We have a motion and a second, and I'm just glad I didn't have to read that,
You're welcome.
40 number number. Tracy?
Show. Show, is Doug there?
Are you there, Doug?
How do you vote, sir?
I am, I didn't hear her say, anyway, aye.
McIntyre? Aye. DeCook?
Aye, motion carries. All right, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Our last item up today is a closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 21.5 C to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the